Thank you, Sachin. A very good morning to all of you, and I also extend my hearty welcome to this. All of you, I've seen more than 30 of you are participating from across the globe. Welcome to India, and RIS, as you know, has been involved in this high-tech capacity building program for quite some time, and I'm sure that the program that they have structured for all of you will really bring a lot of value in terms of what you learn from here, what you exchange from here, and what you can assimilate in your professional career. I also do understand from the list of participants that many of you are actually from a non-scientific background, from very diverse sectors of your government, which makes it really very interesting because as a scientist, most of the time I speak across two scientists. And in order to have science technology as an ingredient or an important content of your policy making, it's important that as scientists that we have to lobby and convey this to our polity, to the bureaucracy at large, and also the knowledge enterprises to bring in the S&T element into the policy paradigms. I just wanted to just tell you today that some of the most important and pressing developmental challenges that faces the globe today and countries across, irrespective of geopolitical boundaries, they have a very strong science and technology dimension. You name it. You talk of air pollution, you talk of climate change, you talk of the fires that are happening in Australia, you talk of the disasters across, you talk of cyber threat, every dimension. You talk of next generation communication, has a very strong element of science, technology, and innovation embedded in it. There is nothing that you can think today which does not have science and technology as a backbone. So it is now increasingly felt that, and also established, that science and technology therefore is a very important pillar of your economic growth, of your ability to provide the unmet needs of the people, the requirements of the country, the developmental strategies of the country, in which S&T plays an increasingly important role. And therefore, there is also a big challenge to the scientific community at large, that they are now expected to contribute in a large domains across, initially in the past it was mostly in health, energy, water, but now it's across so many domains that you have to bring in the S&T elements in order to understand, mitigate, and stop these things to happen. So science technology therefore does not only become an ingredient of your own national domestic planning process, but also in an increasingly connected world, how as a nation you also contribute in some of the international initiatives where each country is actually supposed to contribute. For example, just now Dr. Chaturvedi talked about achieving the SDG goals. How do you really achieve the SDG goals in a manner which is much more rapid, much more quicker, much more impactful, by having the elements of science, technology, and innovation built in it. So it's therefore increasingly becoming evident that science and technology is not only required for your own national planning process, but also for nations to behave as a responsible state actor in a global framework. So this is a changing dimension of science and technology, which in the past was actually more confined to the scientists. Scientists would be more happy in collaborating to create new knowledge, right? Because science gives you new knowledge, right? And this knowledge empowers you. But that conversion of the knowledge into wealth, into action, in contributing to the market, in touching the lives of people, in making what we call, the Prime Minister of India calls ease of living, right? You've heard of ease of doing business. Prime Minister Modi talks of how science and technology can bring in the ease of living. So in other words, we call within our own national perspective science with a human face, right? Science that touches the lives of people and provides unmet solutions in an affordable and accessible way. And today, the complexities of these problems that we have within the nation and across the globe are so large. I think no nation in the world, has neither the capacity, nor the understanding, nor the infrastructure, nor the manpower, nor the wherewithals to actually come out with answers and solutions in an independent way or as a nation singularly. Therefore, it is inevitable that designing partnerships on a win-win platform is what defines the underlying paradigm of using science and technology in international diplomacy. So you have to therefore have what I call strategic alliance or designer partnerships across with countries by creating an important role on SNTI of science, technology, and innovation as a part of your foreign policy imperative, right? Each country therefore needs to bring in science, technology, and innovation as an important ingredient in their foreign policy engagement. And as I told you, this drives also the economy, this drives the market, and today increasingly, in the past, the scientific engagements used to be quite independent of the rest of the geopolitical relationship. Geopolitical relationship today is driven by market, by economy, and therefore there also science technology has to play an important role. Now if you're talking of energy security, you're talking of food security, you're talking of health security of your own country, where I think STI will play a very, very important role. And in order to get yourself what you need to as a part of your country's objective, I think if the STI is built into it as a part of international engagement, it really strengthens the country's hands. So we have to have diplomatic strategies through STI, and this could be explored in various mechanisms like co-development of technologies, joint research initiatives in frontier domains, cross-border open innovation, effective use of technology facilitation mechanisms, in high opportunity and high priority areas of national interest is very, very important for all of us to keep in mind when we are strategizing our own nation's policy imperatives. Now in the 21st century, all of us, and I need not tell to all of you, the rapid development of emerging technologies in the physical, in the digital and biological spheres is increasingly transforming our life. The way we live, the way we connect, the world is becoming increasingly smaller and shrinking. The problems that we see are humongous in nature in terms of the challenges they pose. Therefore, and most of the countries around the table today have also committed to actually achieve the UN SDG goals by 2030. There it opens a tremendous opportunity here for all of us, therefore, to actually for cross-border collaboration in scientific research and development. Therefore, countries have to develop pathways for integrating STI interventions to strengthen their efforts towards economic and social development in achieving SDG goal and build a synergy between the two. Also, developing countries have to build capabilities and skills for harnessing existing technologies, which is already there, as well as ability to actually absorb technologies from outside without actually having able to mitigate the risks and challenges of bringing in those technologies in the country. So you need not only bring those technologies, but you need to have the ability to also counteract these, the various challenges which these new technologies can bring. For example, today you can see social media can create a boon plus as well as a bane. So you need to have the capability to handle, these new forms of communication, which has got grave implications on the society. So I believe, within the countries that are sitting around, there is a great opportunity, therefore, as you embark upon the achieving the SDG goals, the 17 SDG goals and 164 targets. There are certain elements that you can pick up where science technology can play a very important role. Now, as far as India is concerned, India has always believed in engaging internationally in science and technology. When we got our independence in 1947, I will just quote, I'll quote a few examples of India's past engagements, and how in science and technology and how it really has helped India to leverage to where it is in its scientific and technological strength today, and some of the current initiatives which India has taken a lead in using science technology as a part of science diplomacy. Now, just to quote, when India became independent in 1947, it was had a ship-to-mouth existence. In other words, entire food production depended on the imports of food that came to India for the survival of its population. Today, India is a net food exporting country. It is self-reliant in all the foods that India produces, and a huge amount of it is exported. In fact, we need to now have technologies to be able to handle the amount of food that we produce, because much of the food that we produce is actually, before it reaches the table, it perishes, because we need technologies for food processing. And how did it happen? It happened because of a collaboration that we had with the United States at that point of time. What you have heard of is Green Revolution, right? So we started growing a variety of wheat, which was actually developed through scientific collaboration between India and US, that led India to become, completely sufficient in wheat production. And today we do realize that this has made a huge impact on the economic growth of the country. So this is a classic example of how India has been able to leverage collaborations. Now, Sachin talked about almost 10 years of my life I've been involved in Indian Antarctic program, right? And all of you have heard of Antarctica, I'm sure, and the Antarctic Treaty System is a classic example of science diplomacy. Many of us forget about it because it's been happening. In the 50s, when 5 or 6 countries put territorial claims over Antarctica, a coalition of countries came together and declared Antarctica as a continent of peace, right? Where any country can go into Antarctica and establish a scientific research base to understand how Antarctic actually affects the very global system. How deep and intrinsic is the effect of Antarctic in understanding the global circulation pattern, in understanding the global climate pattern, the weather system, and of course now, more important, the climate change that is happening across. And because of that treaty system that came into place, where Antarctic was at a point of time of contention for its resources, became open for scientific research, or a laboratory for the entire world, right? You can imagine that Antarctic is actually bigger than India and China put together, with an average thickness of ice of 3.5 kilometers, right? It's a refrigerator sitting at the bottom of the ocean. And if you start exploiting the resources of Antarctic, it can really spell disaster to this earth. So this treaty prevented, and not only prevented, it gave access to countries to go and set up scientific bases in the country, in Antarctica, and do research. India started its expedition in early 80s, and today we have 2 permanent stations there. We are very effectively engaged with all the countries that are present in Antarctica in order to safeguard its environment, in order to understand the science, the polar science, and its effect on our very existence on this planet. So these are the 2 examples which I always like to quote, in the past, how India has benefited through what I call science diplomacy in engaging with countries across the world. Now today, just to give a glimpse of where India stands, India's investment in science and technology since our independence has been quite steady. Of course, India has been growing pretty rapidly. Commensurate to that growth, our investment in science and technology may not have kept up that pace, but over the last decade, our investment in R&D has tripled. Today, the growth of scientific publications annually is 14%. Today, India is the world's third largest number of producer of scientific papers and journals. This is an NSF report that just came 2 weeks ago. And this is because we have consistently invested in science and we have seen that it has really made a huge impact, because whatever we do through collaboration, and we are actively collaborating with 45 countries around the globe as I speak today. We have projects going on. Most of the countries who are here, except a few maybe, we have collaborations going on in science and technology, and it really brings a huge amount of value in terms of the quality of the science that is produced, its visibility, and its soft prowess of science and technology. The importance of science and technology is its ability to connect across without much of geopolitical ramifications, because of it's a tool through which you actually create new knowledge. Scientists are much more open in doing that, so it's a very important tool for you to engage with various countries. And I can give you some examples where India has effectively leveraged in engaging with countries using the science tool where other things were not working. So I think this is a very important lesson that we have. But and therefore, when we have a new policy that we are currently working on, we are now seeing how science and technology can integrate horizontally into the system rather than being a vertical pillar, right? And that is very important. When you discuss and talk about your national policies, you have to see whether it is transport, whether it is whether it is your textile sector, whether it is your food sector, whether it is your whatever you talk about, how really you can bring in the SNT element into each of your national planning process. The most important thing we have realized in this is how we connect what we call solution science, discovery science with solution science. Now the challenge, of course, always comes. Scientists like to do excellent research, but the knowledge gets confined within the four corners of the laboratory. People think that investment in science is very esoteric. Scientists publish papers, So what we have now shifted in our policy is really connect this discovery science with solution science, right? How we take science out of the four corners of the laboratory to help provide solutions to the society, right? And that's important. And when you start providing solutions to the society, you then contribute in developing products that in turn can help you in connecting with the economic growth of the country. So this has got a complete cycle, and that is where again it opens out to a large spectrum of what I call possibility of international collaboration. So we also understand, to be globally competitive, we have to engage in value-based international partnership and collaborations, which is an intrinsic part. So what are the objectives? As a country, when I engage scientifically with any other country, what are the objectives? First and foremost, you have to see that your engagement should value add to your own national programs, right? If a country comes today and says that I need artificial intelligence and driverless cars, it has no meaning in a country like India, where we have to populate people, we have to give employment to people with a large population. So our strategy is artificial intelligence for all, right? So each country, therefore, needs to make sure. I won't collaborate with Google to have a driverless car for India. It's meaningless. So you need, therefore, make sure that when you're engaging internationally, it brings value to your national programs. That's very, very important. Now, how does really international collaboration give you access to some of the world state-of-art facilities? Today, some of the big facilities that you talk about, as I told you, countries alone cannot manage or fund them. It's a great opportunity and window, therefore, to engage in some of these international facilities that are getting set up, so that your own science becomes visible to the world, and you get access to a state-of-art equipment through these engagements, right? And these openings are coming out across, because today, whether they are large telescopes, whether they are particle physics, whether they are understanding gravitational waves, you know, they're a very complex set of equipment and infrastructure that you have to set up. If you just perhaps contribute even 1% in that, in terms of resources, you get access to the other 99% of that resources. So, you know, you have to therefore strategize where we need to get into and how we have, significance. For example, you know, we have what we call a large tsunami network system which India has developed, which it is providing to the Indian Ocean rim countries. You know, countries around the Indian Ocean rim can become a part of that by just, you know, contributing a little bit in that. In the process, it gets access to the entire tsunami warning system. So it's very important. Now, the third important thing which was not in the past is the techno-economic, what I call advantages. You know, how really we can quickly develop technologies through collaboration. This is a new dimension of international collaboration that has come, which I talked to you earlier, that science needs to be applied. How could industries and enterprises and startups, can interact with each other and develop technologies that are suitable for your country through this process of collaboration? And I can tell you an example. For example, India. India today has an innovation system which is very unique. And why I say unique is our ability to innovate in a cost-effective manner, right? We can cost optimize our resources, as a result of which the output that comes, the price of that is much, much lower. Now, when I collaborate with a small country, which may be geographically small, maybe, for example, I can quote one of the countries, the Nordic countries. Now, why will the Nordic country come and collaborate with India? They have a high-end technology, but they find that if they collaborate with India, India can bring in the aspects of cost optimization in creating innovative products which are more affordable, accessible, and available, and therefore has a large market, not only in our own countries, but across the globe. So therefore, now India's strategy in engaging with some of the countries of the developed world is add value to this process of innovation that we have inherently in the country. And I'd like to quote one example. When we launched, we were the first country to launch a mission around the Mars, and the mission went perfect. The cost of that mission, when the Prime Minister was congratulating our scientists in space, he said, if you took a ride on a cab in Delhi, you would have paid 20 rupees a kilometer. You know, if you took a three-wheeler, you would have paid something like 8 rupees a kilometer, or maybe 10. If you took a ride on that satellite that went, you would have paid 4.5 rupees a kilometer to Mars. So this is what India brings to the table. Our mission to Mars was less than the Hollywood movie Gravity, the production of the Hollywood movie Gravity. So I'll just, and therefore you are doing an innovation, cost optimization, but high quality, which is very, very important. So therefore we need to strategize our engagement also in what I call the techno-economic or techno-entrepreneurship, and that comes out. And of course, as I told you, promote geopolitical relationships through soft prowess of S&T as a foreign policy imperative. A few things that I thought, that are important, which drives India's engagement across are, it is very important that there is a co-sharing of objectives when you collaborate, and it should be based on mutuality and parity. Today, the relationship should not be driven by donor-recipient sort of a partnership. It should be a give-and-take partnership, right? You should be able to contribute very much as something that you bring to the table, and that is what we call leveraging our complementary strengths in international collaboration. And that is very important, and that is how we are engaging with the developed countries in the world. It is not a donor-recipient relationship. It is based on co-investment, co-sharing, co-development, and co-generation of values, right? That is one of the most important. Second is how really you mitigate your own science and technology gaps. Now, there are certain weaknesses in your own country, there are certain gaps in your own countries, how you really engage with other nations to provide value and augment that gap. The third, as I told you, is address techno-social priority gaps, which is very, very important when you talk of achieving the SDG goals. Promoting geopolitical relationship as a part of foreign policy imperative. How do we engage in the soft prowess of SNT to engage with countries when nothing else seems to be working? You know, you can really start something using science and technology soft prowess to develop a relationship with various countries where things don't seem to be working, right? So we have seen that happen in our own system. Now, underpin research and development as a part of knowledge economy, which is also very important. When you do your policy planning, as I said, you must always think about how we can have a research and a technology component built into it, whether your mission may be on hunger, your mission may be on clean water, your mission may be on smart cities, your mission may be on manufacturing. Science and technology is very important. You need to build on that and see how it brings value through international collaboration. Enable people-to-people contact as a tool for public diplomacy through SNT engagement. And this is also very important. Many of us in India, have had the opportunity to study abroad and then come back and work for the country. We have had a lot of brain drain that has happened. Today there is a reversal of brain drain happening, and as an international person, as all of you, it is now today brain circulation, which is very, very important. So keep that in mind, and therefore people-to-people contact by sending your students abroad, by having researchers from outside coming into your country really has a very, very important long-term, strategic and capability development possibility. So I talked about a strategy once. The first I told was engaging with developed countries on a parity basis. The second importance is science and technology as a tool to engage with developing countries, where we believe that giving is gaining. But here, a very important strategy that we have taken is to have proactive engagement, right, with our countries in order to fulfill the needs of those partnering countries, rather than drive an agenda which is very self-motivated, right? The biggest advantage India has is, which I talk about, you talk of any problem in the world, it exists in the country, in this country. It's a huge country with diversity, with large number of problems, and therefore we engage with countries where we provide value to their national mission. So this is the second, paradigm of our engagement. And third, which we call, is the process of technology development, how we help in engaging our industries and our startups and our enterprises through international collaboration, in order that they build technologies or products in a very quick and rapid fashion, and can be deployed in the markets both in the country and outside. So these are the three broad paradigms that have developed, have pushed India's foreign policy imperative. I also like to quote three quick instances of our current engagements in terms of our international collaboration, some three important models that India has taken a lead. We have what we call the Global Innovation Technology Alliance, called GITA. GITA is also an acronym, and it's also one of the, historically a religious book in India, but here we have used this model through which we are able to engage with companies across in the world. And the model is very simple, these projects are led by industry, right? Industry on the Indian side and industry in the partner country. 25% of the funding of a project is provided by industry, 25% by the government of India, and similarly on the other side, 25% from the partnering industry and the partnering government. That means the 100% kitty, where the IPR sharing is actually worked out between the enterprises who are the leads there. And the idea is, in the 2 years time frame, when a project is funded, at the end of 2 years, a new IP or a new product or a new process is generated through this partnership that can then be pushed to the market, right? And we have huge amount of success in this. When we started, we were very apprehensive, but today 8 countries are partners. Our largest partner is Israel, a $40 million fund on this, where 20 million comes from government of India and 20 million from the Israeli government. And our other partners in this Gita program is Canada, Italy, Finland, South Korea, Sweden, Spain, and UK. And in this 2 years' time, so many countries have come on board because they see that this collaboration really helps in pushing technologies to the market, right? And create a huge commercial value. So this is a classic example. And when Gita was created within our government, we did not have a mechanism to fund private sector because it's public money. You know, the government of India didn't have rules to directly fund a private company in R&D. So we created Gita as a not-for-profit Section 8 company, arm's length from the government. You know, 51% of the share was with the companies, with the Confederation of Indian Industry, and 49% with the government of India. So they had a majority stake, and they could therefore develop rules which were not bounded by the government. And through this Gita platform, I could then give money to our industries for international engagement. So this was a model that we developed and has worked out very well. And they are working in some of the most important challenging areas facing the world. The second important example I want to quote is the International Solar Alliance. You've already heard of, which was a membership of more than 79 sunshine countries, mostly the tropical countries. And today now, more than 120 prospective countries are looking to work with India. This is an exemplary example of modern day science diplomacy. The vision and mission of the ISA is to provide a dedicated platform for cooperation among solar resource countries that can make a positive contribution to assist and help achieve the common goals of increasing the use of solar energy in meeting energy needs of member countries in a safe, convenient, affordable, equitable, and sustainable manner. So here the use of technology is very, very important, and ISA therefore provides you with a universal clean energy access, equity and affordability, an alliance that aims to improve solar infrastructure at all levels, innovation, application and adoption. And it also unlocks a huge opportunity of public-private partnership through ISA. One more recent example I wanted to quote is in the last UN General Assembly in October last year, the Prime Minister Modi announced what is called the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI, in which 35 countries, this has been launched in consultation with 35 countries, and this will support the development to build climate and disaster resilient infrastructure required to face the vagaries of climate change. Today you see, as we talk, fires raging in Australia, right? Mm-hmm. This is an example of climate change and how we can scientifically cooperate together to mitigate such challenges that we will see happening, whether it is the sea level rise, whether it is the melting of glaciers, whether it is the reduction of water level in our system, whether it is health outbreaks, whether it is tsunamis, whether it is cyclones and storms. We'll see more and more happening. And again, the more we collaborate and build this as a part of our national strategy, I think more we will gain through this process of partnership, right? So this is very, very important, and a classic example I talked about, which India has laid, the tsunami warning system. In 2006, we had a major tsunami which hit India, after which we have set up a tsunami warning system, and it is given warnings from Hyderabad and from the National Center for Ocean and Information Services to 22 Indian Ocean rim countries, which are partners and who benefit. So what is the process? Those countries provide data, we actually model that data, and on a real-time basis provide out the warnings. So it's an example where, where countries come together, where these sensors are actually deployed in those countries, in the coastal waters of those countries, and those sensors provide data to India, and in a real-time basis, this data is actually assimilated, synthesized, models given, and warnings, supplied to all these countries. So this is how this network has come into being. So I thought, these are some of the interesting examples which I thought I would like to quote, and then, finally, I would perhaps maybe end here by saying that today science and technology collaboration is not a fashion, it is a necessity of the day. As I told you, the challenges that we face today, no nation can address them in a singular basis, and therefore we have to engage. But when we engage, we have to keep in mind that it brings value to your national priority and system. It should not be, as I say, which we used to in our earlier days do, a reactive engagement. It should be a proactive engagement, right? But there should be an engagement. Today, collaborations, cooperation, and partnership is the only way ahead to grapple with the humongous challenges which is actually threatening the very existence of mankind on the world. Be it outer space, be it oceans. Again, a huge paradigm shift that would happen when we see the focus of the world moving more and more towards the ocean. We've talked about space wars. We've talked about countries actually trying to colonize the space. We have talked about, now we're talking about ocean resources in the deep sea, which is a no man's world, right? And unless we collaborate and diplomatically engage, we'll find ourselves left out through the process of negotiating and sitting across in this table and providing our own values, our own perspectives on these international issues, which is particularly driven by science and technology. So my mantra to all of you, which India has really learned and is pushing through in a big way, is to proactively engage and build science and technology as an important part of your national strategy for engaging globally with your countries, be it neighbors, be it on a bilateral platform, be it on a multilateral platform. You have to keep your ears and eyes open and see where it brings value set to your country system and engage with them, those in a proactive manner. It doesn't always require large resources. Many times catalytic resources also can really help in these engagements. And the example I quote, each country has some big national mission, right? You have health, you have water, you have energy missions, where you are already investing in certain amount of R&D in your country. Some of your labs, 4 or 5 of them, are very well endowed by the national funding that you get. You just identify similar set of best labs across in the world and connect them through glue funding that allows the movement of the scientists back and forth through a collaborative mechanism. That can really help to spur the effects and multiple your efforts through this tool of science technology. I think I'll end here. I've almost spoken 40 minutes in this space. Once again, I wish you a very good and productive about 10 days program. I will come back to you. I believe I'm speaking